Recording in progress. So did a quick recap a second ago about what we did in the first part of lecture. So go back, watch part 1 if you're just joining us, because it really sets up the whole second part that we're going to be doing, which is going to be demoing how to do the SAL logo on the table outside, and probably do the projection for the thermos in the interior. And by chance, if you have done that thermos already in Substance, I'm going to show you how to do it on the table or possibly the wall. Just put some graffiti on there just so you can put a projection. It can actually be anything you want. Okay, so everything's looking good. Let's fire up Maya, set our project, and then let's do the Zen garden first. Now for the Zen garden, I'm going to use the table. And if you remember from lecture 8, I placed my wood texture on that table already. So basically what I'm going to do is kind of show you what to do if you've already got a texture there without deleting your texture, starting from scratch. You know, you could always take it off, put it back on, but I'm just going to show you how to kind of swap it out, put it into the network of a layer texture. This way you'll be able to get a little bit of a feel for how to plug stuff in the Hypershade. So first, set project, always set project. And let's open lecture 10, which we already did the wine label in the first part of lecture. And don't really care about RenderMan, sorry. You have fallen out of favor. All right, so what I'm going to do is throw the SAL logo somewhere in the front where the camera can see it. Probably somewhere around here. I could put it over here. Kind of like I got a nice area here. I got a nice area over here too. So let's go to perspective. And let's take a look at our Zen garden wood table. All right, so here's my network. I've got my affordable wood texture that I found plugged into the base color. Now, I want to add in a layer texture into this so that I can start layering stuff on top of the wood. So I can layer stuff like a water ring or a wine ring stain on top of the wood. I can put the SAL graffiti on there. You can put a whole bunch of different things on there. And the nice thing is you can move them around, you can scale them all interactively. So in order to do that though, first thing I need to do is create a layer texture. Now, when I create anything in the Hypershade, it is disconnected. Normally, if you're starting this from scratch, you would plug the layer texture into the base color of your material that's on the table. But since I've already started this, this is always how it goes at work. You're doing stuff, you put your texture on a table, and then your boss comes in and goes, oh yeah, by the way, the customer wants to add their logo, or their granddaughter did the graffiti and they want you to scan it in and put it on the table. It would be so cute. Okay, they're paying the bills, don't care. So instead of me like taking the texture off and putting it back on, I'm going to create layer texture in the Hypershade and show you how to connect it in between the file node and the material. So first off, where do layer textures live? if it helps, they are the hermits of textures, of texture nodes, I should say. They live by themselves. Where? It's going to be one of these. It's going to be 2D, 3D, environment, or other. .2D file. There's a 2D file. Not there. 3D? No. Environment? No. Other? Bingo. Other textures. Remember, it is a container, so it's not going to give you any 2D, 3D transforms. Now, when you create it, you will only get a single layer. That single layer is here visible on the left side under inputs. And notice it says input 0. 0 is always the first number in Maya. We're used to 1 being the first layer, but 0 technically in coding is the first number. So under input 0, there's a bunch of options. We've got color, alpha, blend mode is visible. We're interested in plugging it into color. So all I have to do is go up to my file node, take the out color, and as soon as I click on that little green ball, it gives me a connection noodle. So I can take this, I can plug it anywhere that it'll let me. And notice everything disappears except for color. That's because color is RGB. So now I've plugged my affordable wooden table into here. Now at this point, my layer texture is not plugged into the material. So it's crucial that we take out color of the layered texture. And where's that going to go? Why opacity? I still need it to be visible. Yes. Transmission color. Is it glass? No. So you can, anything transmission, you can pretty much, unless it's glass or transparent, you can pretty much ignore that. Where? Base. Base what? Base. So take out color and go to base. Base color. Remember, all we're doing is routing our texture through the layer textures only layer. So now that layer 1 has the wooden texture plugged into it. Does that make sense? Now, in some 3D packages, you can actually take a node and put it in midstream of 2 connections and it will automatically connect. Unfortunately, Maya doesn't do that. So just take it logically. If your out color is going into your base color of your material, your out color of your file node needs to go into the input of one of the layer texture layers in color, and then you need to take the out color of that layer texture and plug it into the base color of the material. Now we can pile as many things as we want up on top of that table. Now you'll notice that it didn't change the look of my table at all. it's as though nothing happened, which is exactly the way it should be. Now we can go in and add a new layer. How do you add a new layer? Click on what? Layer. Where? Okay, anywhere in here? There you go, right. So anywhere in that blank layer texture attribute area. The more you click, the more free layers you get. Of course, you are responsible for getting rid of the extra ones you don't want, because you don't want them mysteriously showing up in a render somewhere at some time. Now, let's get the layer order. Which layer needs to be on top? Which layer needs to be on the bottom? The blue is on top. Say it again. Okay, so the green is going to be our projection. So yes, that needs to be on top. Now, how do I get it on top? Because if I left click and drag, nothing happens. Yep, you got a middle mouse click because it's Maya. Now, don't be afraid that it got covered up. It's still there. If I turn off the visibility of that blank layer, my wood is still there. Now, at this point, this is where I want to map in my texture. So, how do I do that? So I'm going to use my SAL logo. How do I map it into that layer? Well, give you a hint. First, you want to make sure you got the right layer selected in the layer texture. So there's my layer. How do I put something in that layer? All right, color. So, very good. Yes. So it's just like any attribute in the material. Usually if it's visibility, it's going to be in color, and it's going to go into that little checker input box. So now this brings up my create render node. So now the quandary is, what do I select in here for a projection? Right click what? Okay, so I want to go to file, which is 2D, right click, and there's my option. If you forget and just click on it once, you're only going to get a 2D placement. You're not going to have the ability to move it around. So you have to undo, go back, right click on file, choose create as projection. And now this is what our network looks like. We've got a projection plugged into input 0, which is our first layer in the layer texture right here. And this is where we plug our file node in. File gets plugged into projection. The projection is being driven by a 3D texture that lets us move it around in 3D space. So let's map in our SAL logo. Here it is. And life is good. Let's make sure my layer is visible. There it is. Life is good. Except, where is my logo? Well, one thing you want to remember, anytime you make anything by default in Maya, it always drops whatever node you're working with or you select it into the center of the world, which is the center of the grid. So look at the center of your grid. I'm going to go to wireframe. There's the center of my grid. Right here. And that is my projection node. Actually, that's the place 3D moving the projection around. So let's pick that up out of the ground. Let's go back to 6. And let's move it here. So notice, as I move it around, it's projecting across the top of the table, or in this case, into the front of the boards. But I actually want that to be aimed down from above because I want to be able to have it project onto the boards. So let's pull it up a little bit. I need to rotate it. Rotate it so the pointer of the projection is aimed down. And that's got to be 90 degrees. So now I've got a bunch of SALs all over the place. Now, how do I get rid of all the extra SALs? Because I only want one. And I want to put it in a specific location. Yes. Okay, so the place 2D texture of my file node, yes, absolutely. So place 2D of the file node, that's the one that has my SAL logo in there. Hasn't updated yet here, but it's showing up. So the place 2D, turn off wrap U, turn off wrap V. So now I've only got a single logo. And the good news is I can scale this and put it anywhere I want. So I want to make sure it's on a board. So notice it doesn't really matter how near or far it is. As long as it's aimed where I want it, that's where it's projecting. Translation, rotation, all matters. So let me scale that in just a little bit more. There we go. All right, so almost there. So I can kind of move this around anywhere I want. I can put it all the way over here. Put it over here. All right, so a couple things to do yet. One is I've got this dark area around everywhere that my logo is not projecting. And the second problem is I can't see my wood. What's that? I can't see my wood. Where's my wood texture? Got a render? That's not going to help. So whenever you've got something layered on top of something else, this is where blend modes come in. So what color is the background of the SAL logo? White. How do I get rid of white? Okay, default color. That's under the file node. Goes under color balance. And I want my default color to be white. So that makes everything white. So now, how do I get rid of all that white and allow my wood to show through? Okay, there's my layer. Top layer's right there. All right, so I want to use a blend mode, and let's multiply. There you go. Good job. So let's zoom in on it. Oops, don't do that. There we go. Now, want the table to bleed through a little bit. Want it to look like that ink or paint has been on there a little while. How can I do that? Yeah, let's adjust the opacity of which layer though. Yeah, the very first one. So let's lower the opacity a little bit. We can go down a little further. So now we've got our wood table. We've got our SAL logo on top of it. We got rid of the background for the SAL logo. And we allowed some of the wood to bleed through the logo by adjusting the opacity of the top layer. Now, if we want to, we can go in and add another layer in. Could go in, go find a wine ring stain on the internet, drop it in as another layer, put it on, project it, put it maybe under the glass, put a couple of them maybe around the boards just so they look like, you know, it's been used. And you can gradually build up your wear and tear, all with the ability of moving it around if you don't like it where it's at. Does that make sense? All right, so let's go take a look at, let me save this. And let's go into the interior and let's project the AAA logo on the thermos. So first thing I'm going to do, set project to my interior. And doesn't look like, oh, I know what I have to do. Still processing. Okay. Rainy day dream away. Let me go back and grab my interior. And let's drop that into the interior here. I'm pretty sure that's lecture 7. And I should have some of the objects done here. Yep, there we go. All right, so let's see. There's my table. Well, let's do the thermos first. All right, so I thought I had made brushed metal for this, but apparently I didn't. So let me just throw some brushed metal on here. And then this is a plastic ring. Let's make a new material for that. It's going to call that abbreviated plastic ring. All right, so here I need to make this brushed metal. So in order to make this brushed metal, let's do 6. Metalness needs to come all the way up because it is going to be metal. I've already got reference. Which is right here. So my logo goes about halfway there. Already made my material. Let's go into refractive index. And for this, I need to go to project 6 to get that address because I don't have it bookmarked, which I should, but I don't. And there is no refractive index for brushed metal, which is actually stainless steel, which is an alloy. They don't have an alloy for stainless steel, but the next best thing is titanium, which has actually the same refractive index as brushed metal. So I think I can grab that here. Titanium. All right, so for this, I don't need the refractive index, but I do need reflectance. So this is my 0 degree value. Remember, value gets plugged into the base color. So 0.598. Wait, no, here. There we go. All right, 598. There we go. All right, so brushed metal, more or less. Let's go back to the refractive index. That's 0 degree. 90 degree is my specular color, which is 1. Perfect. Nobody gets hurt. So now I need to make this look a little more like brushed metal. First thing I want to do is, well, my thermos is pretty rough looking. It's kind of blurry. So let's bring this up to 0.4. And the next thing I need to do is make it anisotropic. Remember, it's brushed metal, anisotropic. Most anisotropic surfaces, cylindrical surfaces like this, are horizontal brush strokes. So first, let's crank up Let's go to 0.9. That kind of spreads out my highlight, but I need to rotate it 90 degrees so it stretches. And since this is 0 to 1, 90 degrees is 1/4 of 1, which is 0.25. So now I get those nice stretched highlights. Sort of similar to the way that is. And now this is really dark gray, not quite very reflective. It's pretty rough. So that's my plastic ring. Not very reflective at all. So let's lower that down a whole bunch. And let's make this pretty dark. All right, what have I got here as far as render settings go? Maybe I can turn that off. All right, now, so I want to project this logo onto my thermos. So first thing I want to do is take note, this is my value. I need an actual layer texture so I can have my value underneath of it, gray 0.598, and then my projection for the logo on top of it. So since this is just a solid color, I'm just going to map in a layer texture. So there it is, 0.598. And layer textures are under Create Render Node, Other Textures. There we go. And for this is 0, 0, 0.598. Now, if I hit render, shouldn't look like anything's changed at all. Now I need to add another layer so I can have a projection to put my AAA logo onto. And that's going to go in the base color layer texture. How do I create a new layer? All right, so just left click, puts it in there. Now, which position does this need to be in? So I got to drag it to the left because right now it's bottom layer. Ooh, red metal or green metal. All right, so this is where we plug in our AAA logo. So the AAA logo we have for you guys is all the way down. It's still going? Yep, apparently. All the way down at the bottom. Right there. I have it downloaded already. It's right here. So select, make sure you select the correct layer. Click on that checker button in color. How do I get a projection? Right, so I have to right click file. If I forget to do that, I'm only going to get a 2D. Create as projection. So now I need to plug that logo into the file node. So here's my thermos brushed metal. There's the file node. There's my AAA logo. And I get a bunch of them all over the place. So why is that? Well, don't forget, everything gets dropped in at the center of the world. Now, what I want to do is take this and I want it to go to the AAA logo. So normally I would just move it, translate it around, rotate it. There is a way, theoretically, and I say theoretically, that will allow you to have it snap to the geometry. And it's inside the place 3D. So when you select this, you automatically get the place 3D. And there's a button here called Fit to Group B box. B box stands for a bounding box. You guys are familiar with bounding boxes from modeling, right? It's basically 8 points that defines whatever shape you have in your 3D world. All right, so what it should do is it should snap to the bounding box of this thermos right there, which is basically going to be a small rectangular box. Now, I say theoretically because half of the time when I demo this, it works, and the other half it doesn't. So if it doesn't work, you'll be able to see how you fix it, which is basically translate it manually, rotate it, position it in front of the thermos. If it works, it will automatically take this. So let's just see if it works. Stop talking. So I got to select my projection. And if I hit Fit to Group B box, there you go. Well, it didn't work. There's where it's at. So if that happens to you, which it happens to me every other month, I don't know why. I'm going to undo. Let's go back. There it is. I'm just going to translate it manually. Now, if it works for you, it will snap and take up the entire shape of the bounding box of the thermos. So a couple of things I need to do. First off, it's pointing in the wrong direction, so I got to rotate that around. There it is. All right, so by default, I have too many logos, just like I do every time I do a projection. So to get rid of the extra logos, I have to go into my file node, place 2D, uncheck wrap U, uncheck wrap V. Now you'll notice I have one great big fat logo, which is fine because I can scale it. And I want it to be more or less halfway. Right about there. Not bad. Could be scaled a little bit better. I'll get to that in a second. But I've got this light area here and a dark area around it. We have to fix that. And then we have to do a blend mode. So the background of my logo is white. I need to make sure all this area around the logo is also white. How do I do that? Yep, in File, I go down to Color Balance, Default Color, and I change it to white. Now, I need that to blend on top of this. It's almost a 50% gray background. I need, that's basically the color of brushed metal, or I should say the value of it. So to do that, what do I need to do? Adjust the opacity. That's really not going to help us get this to sit underneath of the logo. We need to change the blend mode. Right now, it's covering up the background color, which is the color or value of our brushed metal. We already decided the logo's white. We made the whole background white. How do we remove white? Yep, we changed the blend mode to multiply. So now it's going to be a little bit darker. And now I can scale it. All right, so really grainy, and that's mostly because I've got a lot of noise in my specular. So let's crank this up. Ray depths, that's cranked up already. Let's just render that out. There we go. So any questions? Does that make sense? Now, if you've already done this in Substance and you've added rust and wear and tear to it, then you'll need to do something to either the table or the walls. So I'm going to guinea pig the table. So I've already got a color on the table. But what I'm going to do is plug in. Let's see, what do I got here? That's pretty dark. So I've already got a texture for my table that I found. My reference for the table is, there it is, interior reference. right here, kind of like that wood. And, oh wait, no, I do want to go back here. So interior source images. Nope, not birch. Oak, nope, that's the floor. I think I might have stuck it in the wrong folder. Nope, that's not it. That's walnut. That's too dark. Nope, that's not it. Oh, there it is. Yep, pretty sure that's it. Let's see what happens when I throw that in there. Let's turn this down again. Make sure we're using the right camera. There we go. All right, so here, this is going to just be a plain old file node since I'm not projecting it. No birch. Let's try that. I think that might be it. Yes, that is it. All right, so there it is. Not too bad. How does that look compared to my reference? All right, that'll work. If we're getting too blown out, I could always go in and lower the base weight, but it's a pretty dark texture anyway. That's kind of why I chose it. It looks good with all light in there. So if I want to put a projection on that table, since I just went through all the trouble of putting a texture in there, and then my boss comes running and goes, wait, no, we want to put some other stuff on top of it. So now I have to add a layer texture into the stream of this material. All right, so where's my table? Table. There it is, desk. So actually adding in a layered texture is not a big deal. Now I could break the connection, put it in, and then put this into one of the layers. But I want to basically do it here in the hypershade. So first thing is I need to create an unattached layer texture. Where do I find it? Anybody? Yeah. So Maya, you got 2D, 3D, environment, other, there it is. So it is unattached. It's got a single empty layer. It's got that green, disgusting green color. That green color is there to make sure that you know, hey, it's empty. If you don't do anything, this is what you get. Yeah, Chris. It's just that one texture plugged into the table. Oh, here. I'm sorry. Over here. Nope, just that one. 2Ds here, 3Ds here, environment. When you click on the mapping button inside the material and it brings up the create render node, you get all three of these selected automatically. So it gives you a whole big long list. But when you select them individually, you're filtering out all the ones you don't want. So they're all still there. They're just, you filtered them basically. All right, so now we want to take this, put it into layer one here, take this, plug it into here. How do we do it? I've got amnesia. All right, so let's start with taking the file node. We want to plug that into where? Yeah, we want to plug it into the input. So let me zoom in a little. So under input, I got to expand it so I see the different layers. So there's only one layer, that's it. I need to find the attribute for color. So now I take my out color from my file node and drag it into color here. Next, I need to attach the layer texture to my let's zoom in here just to make sure nothing changes. I need to attach that into my material. So how do I do that? Yep, out color, layer texture, base color, computer desk. Doesn't look like anything happened. That's a good thing. So now you've got a layer texture. Go ahead. Oh. So now what? Yeah, I got to make a new layer. So click anywhere in the layer texture attributes. That new layer's got to be in which position? Yep. It's got to go to the left, which puts it in the top layer. Yep. Color. Well, make sure you get the right layer. Color, checker box. Brings up create render node. Yep. Right click file. Go to create as projection. There we go. So now down here, take our file. And this is where we find our logo. I'm going to use the SAL logo we had, which I think I still have it in here. And yes, there it is. So SAL logo is in there. And the same thing, it's going to drop that projection into the center of the world. There it is. Now I could try and click fit the group bounding box. What did it do? It stuck it over there. I hate Maya. Because it doesn't like me. Like I said, literally, I did this last month and I said to the class, this does it every other month. And sure enough, last month it worked. It went right to the thermos. This time, no. See, I told you, Maya hates humans. Nobody believes me, but it does. Maya is very spiteful. All right, so here we are. We're getting close. I just need to rotate this. Let's rotate it. I want it to be 90 degrees. And let's rotate it around here so I can put it in. Now, I could also put it on the front too. Like maybe you got a 3-year-old with a crayon, and come in there and go, ooh, which is always, actually a marker is much better because it doesn't come off. So if you're a 3-year-old, yeah, marker's your tool for destruction. And if you have pets, they use it as a scratching post, they use it as a chewing post. So, kids, pets, same thing. All right, you know what? I'm going to go back to putting it at 0, and I want to project it on one of the drawers. There we go. Let's do that. So what's that? Is that 90? Okay. There we go. All right, got a bunch of SALs there. That's good, I guess. So let's pull it over a little. There we go. Make it visible. Let's pull it up just a touch. All right, so we have multiple SALs. Let's get rid of those first. How do we do that? No. It's extra copies. Louis, you had this last time. Yeah, place 2D. Yep, turn off wrap U, wrap V. There we go. Now the only thing left is, well, there's 2 things left. One, that's where you were going, Isaiah. You want to get rid of this dark background. Yeah, so we go into the file node of our SAL or whatever one you're doing. And since the background's white, we want our default color to be white. Last thing we want to do, blend mode, get rid of the white. Yep, we go to multiply. And you probably want to knock down the opacity a little to make it look like the wood is bleeding through that logo. All right, does that make sense? All right, one last thing I want to show you guys. Well, first off, any questions? No. You have to make your own. Yeah. It's really not that hard. Yeah. I mean, any process that you do repetitively, you get really good at. But the first couple of times, it always seems like, oh my God, there's like a whole list of things. But, you kind of realize that after a while, the steps all are pretty much the same. Whether you're projecting inside, outside, on a piece of metal, on a piece of wood, it doesn't matter. Usually you start with a layer texture. Your base layer is going to have your actual texture or color. If it's a wall, it's going to have a base color. If it's a thermos, it had a base value. If it's a wooden table, it's going to have a wood color. Could be a parquet floor, could be curtains, it could be fabric on the sofa. It doesn't really matter. Make sure that's your bottom layer. Make a new layer, put it on top. Map into the color of that new layer a file node, right click as projection. Put your texture in there. Turn off repeat U and V because generally you only want one. Turn off repeat U and V. Make sure that the background, or I should say the default color in your file, matches the background of your logo. Most of the stuff you get off the internet with decals and stuff, they're all white backgrounds. So you make the background white. You blend, the blend mode is going to be multiply to get rid of white. Off you go. All right, so the other thing I wanted to show you is how to utilize one of Maya's utility nodes. So for example, say I've got my chair here. So let's assign a new Arnold material here. And let's go into perspective. Let's render this out. And actually, let's narrow this down even more. Let's take it out of the window, because then I'm not calculating a little bit of glass there. All right, so let's say you get a file off the internet. It's got one of the primaries in it, red, green, blue. I found, went out to dinner last night. I found we were at a restaurant. It had a red checker tablecloth, and we thought, man, that would be great to have a chair that color. You would never do that, but I did it. So went out, found the greatest red checker fabric that I could. Put it on, and it is super saturated. Now, in theory, if this is going to sit in front of a window, after a couple of weeks or even months, it's going to start to fade. The sun's going to beat the hell out of it. Chances are, if this is an IKEA chair, you can pull the covers off and wash them because you got pets, you got kids. Your potato chips got, your Cheetos got ground into the fabric, which would never happen. But, or Doritos, or whatever it is, whatever your poison is, they're all delicious. They'll all kill you. But it's too vibrant. There's too much saturation. So what I could do is I could go take it into Photoshop and desaturate it using one of Photoshop's adjustment layers. I could go in, color balance, desaturate it, but I don't want to take it out of Maya. And I want to do this pretty quick. I don't want to have to go into Photoshop, do it, save it out, bring it back into Maya, render it out. Oh, it's not enough. I got to go back, or it's too much. Use a Maya utility called Remap HSV. HSV stands for hue, saturation, and value. So what I want to do is, well, let's pull up our hypershade and see what this monstrosity looks like. So chair cushion, there it is, too saturated. So all utilities in Maya are in alphabetical order. So I go down under utilities. Remember, we already used the gamma correct. We already used the sampler info. We want to go to remap, which starts with R. So we go down to remap. And you got a choice of color, HSV value. You don't want color, you want HSV. Because what we're really after is the saturation section. So I click on it, and it gives me a simple input on the left. Remember, everything in Maya, input is the left side, output is the right side. So all I want to do is take my file node, take the out color, plug it into the input on the left side of the remap, take the out color of the remap and plug it into the destination, which is the base color. So now I plugged it in, doesn't look like anything happened, but if I select the remap, now I get hue, saturation, and value. And you'll notice that you get kind of a line graph. Bottom left represents 0, the top right represents 1, 1 being the saturation level down here. So if I grab the upper right and move it down, it starts to desaturate. And if you take it down far enough, you've turned it to grayscale. But generally, something like this, you just want to take the edge off it, like 0.95, 0.9, something like that. So let's try this, 0.95. Let's see what it looks like. You can see it's a little less saturated. Let's try 0.9. Now, obviously, there's a lot of light hitting this. It's white, it's red. I probably am going to lower my base weight because honestly, that's like super bleached out. So just like I did for the exterior with the wood table, I knocked down that base weight so that the material didn't accept all of the light. So let me just drop this down a little. Let's try 0.9. All right, so let's go back to here, crank up saturation again. Now that I lowered the base weight, let's see what it looks like. And let's drop this down. Let's go 0.9. So you can see it just took some of that edge off of the red. This is without, or this is the default saturation with the red. And this is with the remap drop down a little bit. So it really took off some of that edge on the red. And that's usually what happens with primary colors like red, green, and blue. If they're really close to being the pure color, they're going to look oversaturated compared to the rest of your environment. So you got to kind of take it down a little. Now, one other benefit or drawback or danger in using the remap HSV is that you can actually change the color if you want to, simply by dragging the hue position down. Because we're remapping the color right now, the hue. You get a color like green, and that even looks more vibrant than the red did. But this is very similar to kind of going through the hue slider, and the slider goes left and right when you do the color picker. And at the 1 position and 0 position, it's going to be red, just like it is with the color picker. Now, this is good for proof of concept, but I wouldn't do this for a final version. You get it approved, then you go into Photoshop or some other image editing program and do it there, because it'll be a lot more accurate than letting Maya do it. But, this is good if the client comes in and goes, yeah, I changed my mind about the red. What would it look like if it were green? Oh, green? Like what kind of green? That one? So it really helps to have tools like this while you're trying to work and get approval on stuff. Like I said, substance is great, but there are times when you want to be able to adjust stuff on the fly. Now, if you're working in a game engine, you've got utilities like this in Unreal that will allow you to take your hue, saturation, and value and kind of drop them down. All right, does that make sense? Questions?
All good.
All good? All right. So let's take 15 minutes, do some work, try projections if you want to. We'll treat the last 15 minutes like lab. If you have any questions, I'll help you out. And then we'll go to lunch at 4:45, come back at 5:45 for a lab. It needs to be visible on either the table or the cutting board or whatever makes sense, actually. I chose those because they're the biggest surfaces that allow you to kind of have free reign where you want it. It's got to be visible. I would avoid the bread. I would avoid the cheese and avoid the knife because it's so small. All right, so any questions in Zoom? Any questions here? Lecture? That was a good question, Isaiah. Thank you. So also, if you have any questions about what the requirements are, don't forget to look at, get rid of that. Let's go back to that. Don't forget to look at the activity. So that would be under the Lecture 10 milestone. All right, I'm going to stop the recording. Of course, it's